Hi, I'm Victoria and I'm a child psychiatrist, and today I'm talking about step 5 of the Parent Powers course. It's all about using your parent powers positively. Especially today, I'm talking about presence, which I think is one of the biggest and the most important powers that you have. So if you'd like to know a bit more about it, stay tuned. Presence is definitely one of your superpowers as a parent, and it's really important that you learn to use it mindfully and intentionally, not when you're made to by the behaviours that your child displays. So we'll talk a little bit about it. So what is presence? Presence is basically when you spend time with your child, when you're available to your child, or when you're letting them know that you're thinking about them. It doesn't have to be by when you're with them, but it can be via electronic means. So you can be present not just face to face, you can be present virtually too. So there's 3 main components to it. And if you think about it, you might be spending some time with them, but you might be distracted by other things. You might be on your phone or cooking or doing other stuff. So actual presence as in time committed to doing something with your child might be quite limited or sporadic. Sometimes we think, oh, we'll do something at the weekend, we'll plan something big. But actually children respond really well to small amounts of presence that happen frequently, as well as having bigger events that happen. But you don't have to be spending hours and hours with them. It can be just regular times. And I think that's the other important thing is the regularity with which you spend that time. So 10 minutes every day is probably better than having 1 hour once a month. It's knowing that you're there. So that's the face-to-face aspect of it. The second aspect is around just being available to your child. So you might not be in the same room, but when they do come in and ask you something, that you do respond to them. Or you might check in on what they're doing. Just, oh, hello, just wondering what you're up to. Just so that they know that you're about should they need you. They might not need you, they might not talk to you, but just knowing that you're about is important. And obviously the third aspect is if you just keep in touch with them to let them know you're thinking about them, or that you've seen something that's made you think about them, or that perhaps you bought something or cooking their favourite dinner. It's just something to let them know you are thinking and they're in your mind, that you know what they like, that they're not just gone from your mind the minute they leave the house. And I'm sure that your child is a teenager, they'll probably find it very annoying, but it is very important that they know that you are keeping them in your mind. And if you do text them and use that sort of thing to make sure they feel your presence, then don't expect them to text back. It's just something that you do to let them know that you're thinking about them. So what happens if they don't get presence is sometimes your child can start to act in ways that makes you be present. And this can be very frustrating. Smaller children, this can be things like tantrums and, screaming and banging things, or, making a mess in the house. This can be very, very difficult because actually, if they're behaving in a way that requires you to be present, then they got what they need, which is your presence, but it's probably not in a very positive way because you're probably feeling terribly resentful that you're having to do this. Teenagers might do something very different, so they might just not come home or be away all the time just to see whether you will become more present because they kind of pull away from you. And if you don't become more present, they may just end up leaving the house and kind of being away for long periods of time, and they will feel uncared for, unfortunately. You might be thinking that you're letting them be independent, but actually teenagers still require your presence. It might not be the face-to-face part of it, but they still need to know that you're worrying about them to a reasonable extent, obviously not over worrying, and that you're keeping them in mind. So it's important to preempt that, because if you got to a point where your child is needing presence because their behaviour requires you to be present a lot, anxious children do this as well, so sometimes children have increased anxiety and they really need you to be around all the time to prevent the anxiety coming on. What you need to do is actually start building the presence in to preempt that. so that your presence isn't related to their behaviour, but your presence is just something that happens every day and all the time. And that's the best way to do it, because if you're being present because they make you be present, it will not be a positive experience for you, and it will probably not be a particularly positive experience for them either. So if you haven't got to that stage, that's fantastic. And if you have got to that stage, you can still do this. It doesn't really matter where you're at. Start building presence into your life. So as I said, it can be very short periods as long as they're frequent and they happen. You don't skip them. They're predictable, they're frequent, and they definitely happen, and you just keep doing it. You keep at it. You won't see a difference straight away, but usually it doesn't take very long. It can take about a week or so, but you can usually see quite a big difference to presence that you put in. You can see how the child responds really positively to that. I always do that with my own daughter. I have to say that if I start to see that something is going off, I will start to just spend a bit more time with her on a more regular basis, and I just find we return to a much more normal pattern of interaction very, very quickly. I have created the 10-minute presence challenge. It's still out there. If you'd like to download a free copy, I'll put a link below if you think that's something you're interested in. It just gives you a few different ideas for how you can do presence differently, especially if perhaps actually being present with your child is not something you've done that much of, so you might be starting on quite a low level type of presence. There's some ideas of things you can do in just 10 minutes a day, and just to get you to do them for 7 days in a row to see what the results were. So hopefully you've enjoyed that, and if you'd like to see that, click below.